Hi, you. It's me, Nicole Phoenix Star, and this is the Phoenix Star podcast. Well, I am very, very, very excited. We have reached the 21st episode, and that is a really huge milestone in the world of podcasts. So when I was setting up my podcast and doing all my research and educating myself on the podcasting hosting platform and all the things, I read a article on the longevity of podcasts, and it said that only 10% of all podcasts started reach 21 episodes. And so, hi, I've now reached the 10% of longevity of podcasts. And that really stuck with me and was such a helpful little seed in those early days because, when you start a podcast, no one knows you've done it. And like so many things in life, people have this great idea and start it, and they don't get a lot of traction or eyes on things or, conversions and stuff like that. And they just think it's not working and give up before they enter the long game. And, if I had a kind of, aligned with such things and didn't have that beautiful little prompt reminder in the first, few weeks when the numbers were quite low, it would have felt quite, daunting, I guess. But I'm a long game girl. I have seen over the years and decades the long game fruits that arise from your labors, and I am so invested in the long game and not instant gratification or quick outcomes, because that is just setting yourself up for failure and disappointment and taking things personally. Just in, the interwebs in life as well. It's all an algorithm. And so the more consistent you are, the more the algorithm, holds on to you. And I have watched my stats in my software hosting platform, and incrementally every single week there's a few more eyes or ears rather that listen to my podcast. And if you listen to anyone reflecting back that might have a big podcast these days, they say, in the early days I had such small numbers and I would never believe that this would be my life and the podcast would be so big and go so far and wide. And although, that's not been my goal because I don't do goals, just showing up each week for me and anyone that wants to listen has been my intention here. I knew for years that I wanted to start a podcast, and like I said, I had a couple of false starts, and then one day it was just very clear that all was in alignment and there was flow. So I am very grateful for everyone that has listened and has shared and commented and sent me private messages. It's just been a really beautiful experience for me. So, yeah, I am having a little personal celebration today that we are here at episode 21, and I will continue to show up each week and share whatever is coming through me or is ripe or alive in that moment, because generally that's what I do. I don't have a list of prepared ideas or script or anything. It's not how I roll at all. And generally I get kind of an insight drop in, and sometimes I don't. So yeah, although in saying that, in December I am starting to bring a couple of guests in, and I have the first 3 guests locked in. And yes, I am really looking forward to branching out into the world of having guests on my podcast. And it's going to be a little format of bring 5 questions and I shall answer them or go into dialogue and discussion. So yeah, like, I guess if you feel like you would like to bring me 5 questions and be on the podcast, just send me a message. Or actually, what I could do as well is, if someone didn't want to be on the podcast but wanted to send me 5 questions, I could do that as a direct answer as a podcast episode. So yeah, things are evolving organically, and I am loving it. So like I said, this whole long game thing, I think it comes from years of getting comfortable in my patient's pants and learning to truly trust the timeline of life, and, letting go of any desire for any outcome to come at a certain increment or instant moment. And I was reflecting back last week when I found myself in the accommodation that I stayed at for my 50th birthday, and where I stepped into my 50s decade very intentionally. And I was at the very beginning of my hormone balancing journey and perimenopause pathway to menopause. And it was such a wild experience. Like, I didn't go there for that reason at all. And I just was doing this journey while I was there, and realized that the little wooden house that I stayed in, has now had a huge renovation and has a long-term tenant in it. And the pool that was under construction while I was there has been fully finished, and its gardens are gorgeously, established. I need some water. In front of the little bamboo house that was built a while ago that I've had people stay at, and I've stayed at as well. And just recently, last month, they finished a 3rd house, which was a gorgeous little glass and wooden house. And they're all got their own, the 3 houses have got their own pools and privacy fences and gardens and outlooks. And I've just watched this place grow over the last 18 months, and it feels like a little kind of parallel version of me. When I first went there, I walked in and they were in the end part of the pool construction from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, cutting tiles at really loud levels and cement mixers and all of this stuff. And I remember the first day I got there, I was like, oh my God, there's construction in my like peaceful little 50s 13 night rite of passage beginning. And I was staying there for 6 nights and I was really agitated and I was like contemplating going somewhere else. And I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I just stayed begrudgingly, but I knew that that's where I was supposed to be. And it, I don't know, like it was perfect because I was able to spend some time in the little wooden house in a cocoon, and it also forced me to go out a lot more than I normally would, and hiking into the waterfall and out to like different areas close by, and it was really perfect, of course. And then just to see the evolution of this place and talking to the owner, and I actually he came in the second last night I left, and he's like, my vision has come to life. There's so much change, hey? And I said, yeah. And it was extraordinary because I was staying in the bamboo hut, and originally it just had the pool in front of it. But since the renovation of the original wooden house that I was in, it had its own little kitchen, and it was just like, it had all the things. It had everything in it. And it was, and we had this incredible conversation about how things had grown and how, he didn't anticipate his short-term wooden house being taken over and a 20-year lease and a renovation done to it, which led him to, building the glass and wooden house behind the bamboo house and finishing off the project with ease. And it was a beautiful conversation. He was so proud of himself, and it was, a gorgeous interaction. And I was, thinking about all of that as a metaphor of my journey and all the things that I seeded in that place very, very intentionally for my rite of passage. And, really hoping that I was able to balance my hormones and get out of the suffering I was in physically. And I really hoped that there would be some change, and had no idea that I would be in the skin I am today. And the amount of energy and vitality and health I have is like literally still blows my mind. And some, just as like, where his property grew, he never ever imagined that it would be anything like that. And then when I went up to the waterfall where I did my very specific ceremony on my birthday, I looked around and was like, oh wow, right. And it all kind of landed in, and I was able to really acknowledge how much things can change in really a short time. But it's a long game, just showing up every day, doing those small incremental things yields astronomical change. And the long game has always been such a rewarding way of living for me. Like just extreme shifts and growth and evolution happens from not wanting things to happen quickly and not being frustrated by things not happening as quickly as I want, or, the way that I thought they would, but really just showing up each day, and that's it. And that is a long game. And I just acknowledge that I acknowledge the long game in that waterfall and how grateful I am to operate that way. And sometimes that waterfall, particularly in the wet season or different times of the year, is really fierce, and it humbles down on you, and it kind of almost hurts the top of your head, or you feel like it's going to rip your hair out. Like, it's really fierce because it's such a big drop. But we're at the end of the dry season and the rains haven't come yet. And so it was a much gentler, less amount of water coming down, and it just felt so gentle. It felt like grace pouring over me, and I just stayed in there and soaked it all in and acknowledged me and just everything that's shifted and changed. And so my life is completely different to the woman that entered that waterfall almost 18 months before. And like I said, I've been back several times since, and I'd been back a couple of times with Leo and a couple of times with other people. And, it was just like visiting an old friend. But there was this huge experience that I had last week. And it really was about this long game. And I thought, that is, of course, so timely that here I am approaching the 21st episode of the Next Star podcast. And I don't need to know where it'll go or what it'll do, but all I know is over the last 21 episodes, I've had some beautiful conversations and gorgeous interactions and messages, and, watching people that I don't even know who they are or where they're from or anything, just numbers of listeners taking the time to share this space with me. And that is just really special. So yeah, that is my conversation today. Just reminding you to be patient. Just like I mentioned last week, everything works out. You don't need to force it. You don't need to, manipulate it. Even if you think you're manifesting an outcome, most of the time it's like a form of positive manipulation. If I just do this, then I'll manifest that. And it's like, that's a bit clunky, no. It's about letting life live through you and fully showing up to the dance of consciousness. It's such a precious thing that that so many people don't recognize. This life is so precious. People wish it away or bastardize it or wish it was different or wish they didn't have it. And being able to participate in the dance of consciousness is a true blessing. It's such a gift. And to think otherwise is just victim mentality and emotional immaturity and trauma loops and unresolved ripe evolution being danced in. So anyway, go the long game, my love. I highly, highly recommend it. All right. That is all I have today. Thank you so much, hand on heart, for being part of my journey. My website is www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. And as always, if there is anyone that you feel may benefit from this, please share. You can also subscribe in the podcast platforms and get notifications each time I post, if that is something you want to do so you don't miss out. That's an option as well. All right, my love. Thank you so much. I love you. Mwah.